The definition of sport tourism in the United States has been shifting slightly over the last couple of years. With the advent of the massive amount of youth sports, we've tried to do is we've tried to come up with some vernacular that is very similar to what the Convention and Visitors Bureaus use. So when we're speaking to people that are working in that space, they understand what sports really is. So what we call group travel is, generally speaking, youth sports tournament team travel, which is about a $19 billion industry now in the United States. It's very significant. Our leisure travel are people the fans that attend games, and then we've added participants. So when you go to races, run, kayaking. So there's three aspects of sport tourism in the United States that we actively recruit people into those activities, and we actively help destinations stage the activities along with the event rights holders. That is a great question, and I always take great care in answering that, because I'm very familiar with a sentiment that often happens about the arrogance of the United States, and we don't have all the answers, but a lot of times people think we do. But the trends right now in the United States, which tends to make it a little bit different than the rest of the world, centers on the amount of destinations that we have around the country and the sheer volume of events that we're hosting from in a wide variety of areas. And so some of the things that are beginning to affect the sport tourism in the United States really centers on that youth sport market I mentioned to you earlier. When you got $19 billion of youth sports, what's happened, it's triggered additional activity around the building of facilities, the establishment of indoor-outdoor parks for these kids to play. So you're getting thousands of arenas and stadiums and courts and grass courts and waterways being built, and it becomes an economic development tool for most of these destinations. So it's a driver for a tax increase with the taxes that come into the community. And so while these buildings are going up to actually stage the events with the kids, one of the things that really makes it unique is the massive amounts of locally owned and operated venues. The second thing is there's been a shift in the United States in terms of really bringing in outdoor sports tourism. So this whole advent of the outdoor activities really, being propagated by the Gen Z people, who are a little bit different than millennials and what they want and what they consume. They're really looking at trying to get out and do the runs, the races. You've got pickleball that's come up, and they're getting involved in pickleball. So you have all these kind of off activities that weren't mainstream that are now becoming part of the U.S. canvas out there that is really bringing a lot of revenue into the communities. The one big driver that's occurring in the United States right now is the shifting of the definition of success. And I've been involved with a couple groups, your group in particular, and the IH people and ASWAF, and we too here in the United States are looking at really broadening the definition of success away from just hotel stays and economic impact to really include resident sentiment, the impact it has on communities, how it helps job creation, how it helps build more kids' activities. And one of the things right now we're worried about in the United States as far as trends that we're seeing that we don't like is that one of the major research institutions, the Aspen Institute here in the United States, put out a study recently that their information is telling them the kids between 12 and 16 right now, over almost 60% of those kids don't plan to re-engage back in sports once everything comes clean here in the next three or 4 months. The problem with that is it becomes a bucket that carries into the future. So we see that possibly affecting everything from college to pro. And so when we look at the trends and the impact in the United States, all of these aspects make it a little bit different and unique. The one thing that's finally coming around that's getting a little more parallel to what occurs in most of the countries around outside the United States is the funding mechanisms are finally coming for acquisition of activities and events to help support them. In the past, almost every country in the world helped support the activities and events in their countries through some type of state, city funding, government funding. The U.S. just doesn't do that. The owned and operated events that the destinations they're staging right now, this massive youth component is one of the biggest things in the country right now, and it's really creating its big job driver. The building of the facilities around that, so these kids have a place to go play, really augment what's taking place all the way through college and into the professional ranks. The last thing I'll mention, there's others, but the last thing is they're going on right now is something that I've come up with a term called the miniaturization of sports. So you're seeing, because fans are fickle often, and they like action, you're seeing rugby sevens came up, not the full rugby, but rugby sevens. You have 3v3 in soccer. You have 3v3 in ice hockey. In our American football, we have 7v7 right now. So you're getting this miniaturization of sports, which is creating the scoring, this arena football, which is smaller than the regular football that the U.S. has at the National Football League level. And so that enthusiasm and excitement is something that's a kind of a whole new genre of sporting activities that is finally filtering down to the kids. So you're seeing kids participate in those, and it's filtering up into the professional ranks where fans actually engage. Probably something you're seeing around the country, here in the U.S. and around the world, is the change that's occurring with the fan. There's so much, the consumption of the sporting event is changing. So you have so many new platforms that are actually publishing events and activities, from the Twitters to the, all the different network platforms, the Amazon's coming in. So you have consumption being different. The fan experience is something that almost every place around the world is really focusing on. How do we improve that fan experience? How do we make it so that they're having fun? And the one thing that's really, really apparent across and around the world is the really invasion of technology and the huge amounts of data that are being generated. I'm not sure how it's all going to be used, but innovation right now, I say that coming out of COVID, and within 3 months, United States will be fully launched. Most places are right now. There's going to be a little bit of a hangover, residual negative effect, and parents are not feeling good, or people don't want to do it, and people are going to get COVID. But the actual thing that's going to happen, I'm looking for a boom in innovation in sports around the world, because of the technology that's coming in, because of the analytical ability to look at how things are done, to the relaxing of the gambling rules around the world right now, and the integration of that and making the fan a more active participant. We don't know what the outcome is going to be. There is a significant amount of change occurring that's innovative. Some of it's going to be uncomfortable. You may have read in the United States, one of our biggest national governing groups, the NCAA, just got hit by the Supreme Court that they've got to change the way they do their business. The USOPC has been struggling for a while, trying to figure out how do they reinvent themselves to go for the future. They're losing some of the sports feeder systems and some of the Olympic sports, not not the big sports. So there is so much that's in front of us, Melanie, that we can really do for people that want to get engaged in this from a career standpoint, the fan consumption and how we're going to appeal to those people, the amount of activities and games. And tourism is the #1 driver, because the economy in the United States was crushed. So what we're saying right now in the United States, with all the convention bureaus really still closed down, sports, and I would venture to say it could be around the world, sports is the catalyst to the reentry to business and the reentry to tourism across the world. Yeah, the trends across the U.S. are becoming a little more regionalized. As we've come out of some of the early stage COVID launchings, it's been very uneven. Some states and jurisdictions have opened quicker, some never closed, some are still closed, some still have their rules in. So the uneven opening has created opportunities for markets to really gain market share for sporting events. And there are areas right now, as I mentioned earlier, the one area that we're seeing really start to pick up, and there's a lot of interest in it, is this whole area that we think is brand new called outdoor events and sports tourism. And the focus around the fishing competitions, the bass fishing competitions, the running and the races and the different kind of races, and even corporate games where you have, sporting activities between corporations. You have kayaking, and the cycling is picking up in the United States. Those are have seen more light of day in Europe, as example, but in the United States it hasn't. So what's happening is in some of those areas around the country that have natural, places where people can participate in those kinds of activities, you're seeing an enrichment of their growth around that. I shouldn't say that. A significant amount of markets around the country, particularly small markets, are building these youth sports palaces that have 20 soccer fields and 10 volleyball courts and So what's happening is even the smallest municipalities can compete with the bigger ones because now they have the ability to stage an event. And we have shifted very hard towards the travel environment for all of our sports. The United States was always known for its recreational-based sports. So your soccer, your Little League baseball, those were massive recreational programs, whereas Europe was more, and was run through our school systems. A lot of our school systems, pushed the sports out. In Europe, club sports was the main driver. Well, for the most part, in the United States, we have now shifted. We've gone over the hill, and now we're really built on travel, and that's what's created these activities around the United States and massive opportunities for these smaller markets to really pick up some big money from a tax standpoint by building these facilities and hosting tournaments. I was in a market which I considered a fairly smaller market, Buffalo, New York. Buffalo, New York, when I was there visiting as a guest of the president of the CVB, we went out and we looked, and they have a hockey site where the U.S. Paralympic hockey team is housed, and they host hockey tournaments. And he told me that they were full from October to April every weekend with hockey tournaments with as many as 500 to 600 teams at $1,600 to $1,700 a team playing on a weekend. Imagine what that does for a community, and not many people really realized the significant impact that ice hockey has on some of the markets. So in those markets that have those unique kinds of abilities to stage those events, they're really excelling right now, particularly those that have opened early. The other ones are going to have to catch up. It's interesting with COVID-19, may not be the best choice of words, but when COVID first hit, we sat down as an organization and we looked at what could we do to make a difference. It was apparent that everything was shutting down, and it was shutting down quicker than people thought. And most people in the early days, there were the disbelievers. There were the ones, oh, this is going to go away in 2 weeks. And then we had a president who said drink Clorox. And we had all kinds of things going on that created some confusion about it. But as an organization, what we decided to do is we put it into phases. There's the reaction phase, which is, oh my God, we're out of work. We got no money coming in. The hotel industry in the United States is the prime driver of financial source to stage tourism events. That's number one by far. So with nobody staying in hotels, they had no income. So massive layoffs started to occur. And it shocked people because they thought this is going to go away. It's the flu, it's that kind, and it didn't. And so one of the things was that was the reaction, and the reaction lasted. We thought it would last 90. It lasted longer. There were a couple waves of layoffs. So then we said, well, let's retrench. Let's stop the negative energy that's going out there right now about those layoffs, and let's really start to be the number one aggregator of information across the country. So we put our entire team onto web to go and look for resources about COVID, about recovery, about health, about science, everything we could find. And we built this resource that we started getting inundated with people coming in and people calling us saying, hey, could we use that data? Absolutely. So aggregation of content was very, very important. The second was we wanted to generate original content around education. So we hosted a number of webinars, and many of them free, and then we started to produce some educational content, and our educational programs blew up. We added a whole series of programs and certificates, and all of a sudden it gave people something to do. The last kind of phase after the retrenching is the relaunch, and we're in the relaunch right now. And as I said earlier, the relaunch is uneven. The markets that stayed open all the time are actually doing extremely well. Florida, Texas, Arizona, South Carolina, they didn't really close down. Their governors had a different perspective on what they were going to do and how they're going to handle it. California just opened last week. It was shut. And you got 40 million people who want to participate. What was happening in California, for example, is the travel teams were driving to Arizona, hosting their tournaments in Arizona where they could play, and driving back. So they drive 2 to 4 to 6 hours to go participate, do their tournament, and come back. So the uneven nature really is something that occurred. And you saw that in our professional sports because some states allowed professional sports fans to open up early and start attending. We are anticipating in the next 3 months that most everybody will be open across the board. the virus is not going away. There's more than anecdotal evidence that it's going to continue on. We're going to have to find a way to live with it, and that's what we're going to have to do. The things that are worrisome going forward is what are going to be the lasting effects that we don't know 3 to 5 years ago from now that we're going to learn. The people that came down with it, do they really have long-term lung problems? So these athletes that are participating, and there's hundreds of thousands in America that got sick, what's going to be the impact on them in terms of participation? So all the health sanitization, how is that going to play? I know we put away finally our plexiglass in many places, but there's hand wipes everywhere. My gosh, it's crazy. And so as that happens, the schools are finally going to open. I'm afraid for these last couple of years, the school systems are closed here. These kids going to participate in high school sports. Could be a lost generation of kids for a couple of years. So there's still a lot of effects that are sitting out there. So we want to shift our energy and put all of our energy towards this innovation, this new trend line, this let's get out there and really help our markets, build. And it's really time to do partnerships and better partnerships with their European friends. And so we're really excited to work with you guys. Melanie, Madam Secretary, you've been terrific for me, for us, for everything we do. There's others, that we're working closely with China. I see there's great opportunity for us to do better partnering, to do some event sharing that we never thought about before. Oftentimes in economic struggle, things you never wanted to do before or thought about doing take place because survival instinct outweighs some of the petty jealousies that occur sometimes and mitigate your ability to get something done. Yeah, boosting sport tourism, we're going to start to work with organizations we have not worked with before in terms of developing some additional events and activities and support. The organization is small in terms of volume of dollars and staff and everything. But we have significantly grown during COVID to the point now that we are nationally relevant from an advocacy standpoint. So we've organized, instead of having committees, which I think are non-functional and actually get nothing done, they're nothing more than sit around and have coffee and complain about the organization. We started something called a community, and a community is really an engagement process of special interests. So we've got 10 of them. So one of the groups that we've formulated a couple years ago that did not exist a couple years ago was our state sports tourism group. So we have 31 states that have a group that is all the sports commissions, the government, some of the cities that all come together under one roof. And we've formed an organization that 31 of those states are part of that. So when we have our regular meetings, we talk about national advocacy and what role we can play to help on a number of fronts. We need, as an organization, we need to be driving the reintegration of physical fitness back into high schools and elementary schools, so we have more participants, because right now they're bleeding away to the travel side. That's part of the advocacy. We need to do a better job in getting funding for education around health and sports. So as we do go through some of those things, one of the initiatives that's taking place right now that we're part of is around an insurance coverage that will allow the families to use the money for their kids' registrations. So those types of things, from a national advocacy standpoint, we feel will be the first time out of the blocks that this organization is going to be able to do something on a state level and on a national level. And the last thing is we feel really strongly about building the bridge to diversification, equity, inclusion in this industry. There's no direct pipeline from colleges into this industry because from a degree standpoint. So we need to do a better job as an industry to get a representative balance across the board of all genders, types, religions, and do a much better job of bringing people in to be able to help us stage the activities we do. And we also need to do a better job educating people. So we're going to be putting massive amounts of energy and dollars into our educational development and programming.